The Secrets of Movies and TV Shows is brought to you by the StarQuest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give. You're listening to The Secrets of Movies and TV Shows. Hi, I'm Dom Bettinelli, and you're listening to The Secrets of Silo Season 2, where we will discuss the hidden layers and deeper meanings, there's no pun intended, but it is a good pun, the deeper meanings of this Apple TV Plus show. Joining me today on the panel are Jeff Haecker. Hey, Jeff.
Hey, Dom.
And Alix Murray. Hey, Alix.
Hello, Dom.
Folks, before we get into it, I want to remind you to like The Secrets of Movies and TV Shows wherever you find us on social media. Give us a share, help us spread the news about this podcast, and also leave us comments wherever you find us. We love to hear from you. We want you to join our conversation. You can also follow our show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, TuneIn, your favorite podcast app. You can also listen to the show on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/StarQuestMedia, where, of course, as all the YouTubers say, you've got to hit the bell and subscribe and comment and all those things. And finally, if you could write a review of the show at Apple Podcasts or give us a rating wherever that's possible, that also really helps us a lot get the show out to more people. So we really do appreciate that. And I want to tell you about another show on the StarQuest Network I'm sure you will enjoy called The Secrets of Middle-earth, which you can find wherever fine podcasts are found or at sqpn.com/Middle-earth. All right. All the preliminaries aside, let's talk about Silo Season 2. I want to remind everyone that we had an earlier episode back in 2023 on Silo Season 1. Jeff, you were on that one, I'm sure.
Yes.
But I forget who was on that with you, but I don't think I was.
I think you were in Father Corey.
Oh, right. Father Corey. Yeah, that's okay. My memory's shot. I'm at this point in life. I've recognized that, but I feel like I've done a lot of the shows. But Silo Season 1, so you can go back and listen to our take on that season back, and that was episode 116 of that. But now we're going to talk about Silo Season 2. But in order to do that, I want to recap where we left off at the end of Season 1. So we had Juliet in exile. Juliet, who had become the sheriff of the silo, was sentenced to cleaning, being sent outside, which is essentially a death sentence. And because she uncovered some forbidden truths about the silo and its history. And unlike her predecessor, she realizes that her helmet's display projects a deceptive, idyllic environment, which is, I want to unpack that as we go. And then recognize the illusion prepares herself, her suit, to survive in that environment. We've also ended with the blockbuster discovery that there are multiple silos. When she gets outdoors, we see this overhead view. We see many silos. I think they say 50, but something like that.
So.
Yeah. And then there are some unresolved issues. What is the true nature of the outside world? What is it idyllic? Is it artificially bad? What happened to the world? Who are the founders? What is the purpose of the silos? And at the end of Season 1, it was, what will Juliet's fate be? Well, now that she's out of the silo, what will happen to her? So those were where we ended. At this point, I should have said earlier, we're going to spoil everything that's in the show. So if you haven't watched, well, you're too late for Season 1, but I've already just spoiled it. But for Season 2, we're going to spoil everything there that's in the show. We will not spoil from the books. As for the three of us, the only one who's read the books is Jeff, and he's pledged on the pact that he will not spoil us on the future events from the books. But insights from the books on things that we've seen are definitely welcome. So what happens in Season 2? Juliet has discovered Silo 17, which has been abandoned or appears abandoned, but it had its own rebellion that slaughtered almost everyone. She encounters Solo, the solitary survivor, we think at first, and she learns more about the multiple silos and what's going on in the silo. There's a rebellion in Silo 18, the original silo, between the folks in the down below and the folks in the upper parts. This is very on the nose, their class symbolism. There's an unresolved threat of some kind of safeguard. There's the legacy, which is a part of the vault that contains the forbidden knowledge that only certain people are allowed to have. Very Garden of Eden, tree of good and evil, forbidden knowledge. Juliet is working to make her way home because she's become a sort of messiah figure. Everyone thinks she's dead, and they want to. She's the reason for the rebellion. She's become a symbol. She wants to get home because she knows that if she doesn't, that could result in what happened in Silo 18 happening in Silo 17. And then we get some flashbacks to bookend the season. The first episode, we have a flashback to the rebellion of Silo 17. And at the end of the season, we get something like present day today, like somewhere near 2025 or thereabouts, where we see something that hints at the origins of what caused the silos to be. I don't think I missed anything there. I think that's where we are.
That was a nice rounding off of the whole season 2, yeah.
So let's talk about your overall impressions of season 2. Alex, since this is your first time talking about Silo, I'll give you the floor. What was your overall impression of season 2 of Silo?
I really liked it. I should say that I binge watched season 1 and season 2. So for me, it was much more, I didn't have that lag of time. So it was, everything seemed a lot more immediate. And if I find a universe I like, I can very easily jump into it. So for me, it was almost like real time, season 1 and season 2. I thought that season 2 was a bit slower than season 1, but it was like a slow burn. There was just enough, because of course, in the first episode of season 2, there was almost no dialogue. Relatively no dialogue, especially with Jules, because she was just trying to survive. And so that was really interesting. That actually held my interest quite a lot visually, but it was darker visually and then darker in terms of what was happening in the silo.
Okay.
In both silos, shall I say. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this season. And yeah, it did appear slower, but for those who may not know, the first 2 seasons actually cover the first book. So the first 2 seasons, it was actually covering one book. So I think that's why it was a little bit slower at times, because they were developing things that will be paid off in the later seasons and later books. And what they've said is season 3 will cover the second book and season 4 will cover the last book. And I think there's going to be a little bit of, I won't say what, but I think they're going to mix things up a little bit from the book in that regard. But yeah, overall, it was a great season. Even though it's been a while since I've read it, because I read these a long time ago before the show was even a possibility. I think before even Apple TV was a thing. So getting into some of the details, I don't remember. And they have changed some things and expanded some things. So I really enjoyed the season. It set up a lot of good mysteries. And yeah, they're already filming season 3 and it's shooting back to back with season 4. So hopefully it'll be just a year or so in between rather than a couple of years, which due to the writer's strike, it took a little bit longer probably. But yeah, overall it was a great season. Yeah,
because they did first book in 2 seasons, it slowed things down a bit. I do look forward to, not that it was, I didn't feel it was too slow. The pace will pick up, I'm sure. The one thing you mentioned, Alex, that first episode and the almost wordless exploration of the abandoned silo. And one of the things I got with it, especially when she got to the very end of the episode and we see Solo on the other side of the door to end the episode, the eyes. It felt very much like Lost to me, like the TV show. It had those vibes of Lost. And in fact, lots of this have those vibes, the underground vault and the mysterious meaning and the strange happenings.
And the hierarchy, the really strict hierarchy.
Yeah, exactly. And so, and I loved Lost. In fact, I'm one of those weird people who thought the ending was fine. I was okay with it. And so I really like this. I've heard about with the production of Silo, they basically filmed it in 2 parts. They filmed it, all the stuff in Silo 17, the original Silo, and then they redressed it and filmed everything in Silo 18, so the abandoned Silo, because they had to have it. But it's the same sets, of course. They didn't build 2 identical sets.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense,
But Jessica Ferguson, who plays Juliet, was saying how isolating it felt to because she didn't see any of the rest of the cast apart from what's his name, Steve Zahn, yeah, and then the couple other people that they eventually encountered. But so she was talking about how it really got her into this, like how Juliet would feel to be isolated after having lived in this relatively compact space her whole life. You've never gone more than, I don't know how deep the silo actually is, but like maybe a mile at most.
It's like a mile deep. It's like a mile deep. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So you've gone no more than a mile away from any point ever in your life. And now suddenly she's completely isolated in another place. And she talked about how that made her feel like like this is how Juliet would feel. And I really have come to admire the character of Juliet. Like, she is strong and driven, and she's come so far. Like that, at the beginning of the season 1, she was self-involved and angry. And then she gets chosen to be the sheriff, which is still weird. Like, she got picked out of all the people. She got picked to be sheriff. And how it drove her. And she came to this knowledge that was forbidden. And it drove her in the face of all opposition to know the truth. And she's such a driven person. I really find her fascinating as a character, how driven she is, more so than any of the other characters. I really enjoy seeing Juliet thrive and to look forward to, well, what happens when she gets back then? Because when the Savior returns, I'm not sure her message will be appreciated by everyone there.
No, that's true. Well, I have to say, Juliet, or Jules, I really like her character because I think sometimes in an effort to portray a strong woman, you just end up getting a really exhausting and irritating woman. And I know, and I just find
I'm glad you said it.
Yeah, I know. Isn't that sad? I can say that. But what I like about Jules is she knows her limits and she knows her capabilities. You can see there are times when she's quite vulnerable and she's unsure of herself. And she has to, you can see her mentally, talking herself through, okay, you can do this. But then where she's capable.
Right.
Like when she first got into Silo 17 and she was using her body, working with that, I think it was a crowbar, some kind of leverage. Yep. She was trying to create leverage in order to get in. And to me, that's like a very engineer thing to do because she wouldn't have the brute strength to get in, but she could position her body in a certain way to create some kind of leverage, which she did. So I appreciated where she knew how to use the skills she had, but even small ones. And I'm going back to season 1 here, when she had basically broken into Sim's apartment and his wife hostage, was it Camille?
Right.
And she's looking on the computer and Camille is behind her, doing all kinds of stuff. And you think, okay, this is probably a person who's not trained in security.
Yeah. Yes.
Do you know what I mean?
I remember that scene, thinking, don't turn your back to her.
Exactly. So I like how they show her. She's like a believable person. She's not great at everything.
Yeah, exactly. She's not Lara Croft. She's not unbelievably capable. By the way, I misspoke earlier. The actress's name is Rebecca Ferguson. I got it mixed up with Lady Jessica from Dune.
Oh, yeah.
That was her character in Dune, which she's also great in. But yeah. Jeff, did you have something you wanted to say about Juliet?
Yeah, well, I was just going to say, just to go back to why she was chosen as sheriff, it was because she was uncovering the mystery. I forget her boyfriend's name, but her boyfriend had found, had found the ancient digging machine and had the computer. So he was already aware of mysteries, and I think he was working with the previous sheriff already. So the sheriff kind of, if I'm remembering correctly, the sheriff kind of named her as a successor so that she could dig into the mystery, because she's the kind that's, she's not going to let it go, because she grew up in mechanical, which I believe it was this season that we actually see the flashback of her going to mechanical for the first time, because it was that her mom died and she just couldn't live with her dad anymore, and her brother died as well. Right. And so she just had to leave and went to mechanical, and we see her kind of growing up, fixing a toy at first, and then really finding a place there, because she's brilliant and could have been a doctor. She could have followed her father's, been his shadow, or followed his footsteps. She went to mechanical, and so she's got that drive to figure things out. And
she's a problem solver.
Yes.
Solver.
And when she was trying to get into Silo 17, you can imagine her air was running out. And she could only make it to one silo, and if she doesn't get in, she's dead. So she's working against the clock there. So, she's if anyone has to survive outside the silo, it's probably good that it's Juliet because she has the skills to be able to do it. Because they fixed her suit with the better tape because the suits were designed to fail after a few minutes because they didn't want people to wander beyond the horizon. So
I know, it's so insidious.
It is fascinating. Her dad, as a character, the doctor, was awesome. He was a broken man. He'd lost his wife in this tragic circumstance. He'd lost his son and in a way lost his daughter, and then realized he was being used as a tool by the silo. The silo itself has a personality. In fact, we find out that there's an AI basically running everything. And he's being used as a tool to give people hope and then have it taken away. Couples who think that they've been selected to have a baby, but instead he's told to insert a birth control device and intervene on a subcutaneous birth control device so that they think they're trying to have a baby and that they can't. And I've known people who struggle with infertility and how devastating it can be to say, I'm broken. I can't even, especially for women, I can't even fulfill this basic part of who I am as a woman. And because I'm broken somehow, and how that harms you mentally and spiritually. And he saw his role in that, and he rebelled against it. And in the end, sacrificed himself in the name of Juliet. He dies before he knows Juliet is alive, right? Yeah.
He does. Yeah. So he really is dying for the truth, truth of what was happening. And one of the things, if I could just go back, I think it's interesting, Dom, the whole deception that they have for certain couples, because it's not every couple. Some couples are allowed to have children, and it's the couples who are more compliant. And so he actually, because of his wife, they were never meant to have children. But one of the things that struck me were the contraceptive devices really look nasty.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, they look painful. They're like metallic. It's really bad. So even there, it's suggesting what they're doing is not a good thing.
Right.
It's not a good thing. But yeah, his character arc he was a very sympathetic man because in his sacrifice, he redeemed himself.
Yes. It was right. He was making that sacrifice, knowing the things he had done wrong and trying to redeem his error, atone for what he had done in the service of the people of the silo. He was really doing it for the people. Then we have, to contrast that, we have Bernard, who starts as the head of IT and then becomes mayor. And then we have the judge, Johns?
Which one? No, Johns was the first mayor.
Oh, right.
And then Judge Meadows, Mary Meadows.
Yeah. Right. So we had Judge Meadows, and we have this very strange relationship between them. She started as his shadow, his second, but then she left and became the judge. Once she discovered the truth of the safeguard, she's one of the few people who discovered the truth of the safeguard. We can talk about the safeguard in a few minutes. And she wants to go outside. She wants to go clean. She wants a suit, which is essentially she wants to commit suicide. And it's because and you could correct me if you think I'm off base, but I think it's because she knows the truth about the sky, and she's seen pictures of the world as it was and knows the things about the world as it was. And she's tired of living this lie inside the silo and wants to just see the sky. And even if it kills her. Do you think I'm off base? Was her motivation? What do you think? Why do you think she was so driven to be outside?
I think, sorry, I don't know, Jeff, did you want to say something?
Oh, no, go ahead.
So I actually think Judge Meadows was just on a slow suicide track anyway for years. And so to contrast her desire, her desires and motivations were all from a point of despair. Whereas Juliet going out and trying to find the truth, she was motivated by maybe there's something better. Maybe there's a way to solve this. Judge Meadows she just didn't care. She surrounded herself with luxury. And I can't remember. There was something that happened. Oh, well, of course, it was when Juliet refused to clean. And then she poured her alcohol down the sink and was thinking, maybe I can escape this. Yeah, I think she kept imagining herself as the wizard in The Wizard of Oz. She kept referencing that book.
Yeah, because I think she also mentioned she wanted a suit to go outside.
Yeah.
And she wanted a good suit that would get her away long enough to die in peace. Because they mentioned Bernard has one, kind of like an emergency evac suit that maybe can get you to safety if you're the mayor. And that's
get to another,
there's
another silo.
Yeah.
If you're
that's
from
just my guess is what that's for.
One of the elites, you can.
It's like the captain's escape pod or kind of a thing. And I think it's just that she was so depressed by what she saw. Is there's no way out. We're stuck here forever. There's no hope in the silo, and there's nothing we can do. So I'm just going to try to drink myself into oblivion. And I also didn't realize until halfway through the season she's played by the actress who was in Rings of Power. She played the goond in the not the Harfoots but the
Really?
Stores.
Oh my gosh!
And it took me almost the end of the season to realize that, because I was like, she sounds so familiar, and once you notice it, but it was that same actress. So her portrayal was really interesting, and and then ultimately she gets to watch the Apple Vision Pro or whatever that Bernard shows her after he's poisoned her, of animals and stuff, and like videos or of a jungle or what, I think it was a jungle. He was like, look at this thing, look at this monkey, look at this bird, and she gets that a little bit of final piece there. But I think it's just that she's hopeless, that there's no hope for anyone, and knowing about the safeguard, they could be killed at any time. So
living under that threat of at any time everyone could die, like the entire silo could be wiped out by this safeguard. And let's talk about the legacy, the AI, the safeguard, because this was one of the big revelations of the season. Inside the inner sanctum of IT, accessible only to the head of IT and his shadow, is this special inner vault that has an AI, which is a forbidden. All of the technology in the silo outside is pretty primitive, even compared to our day. The computers look like they're from 1985. They have the phosphor green screens and everything. They don't have elevators, and even video cameras, although they have them, not everyone knows they actually exist, especially at the beginning. They don't understand video. And I think even books are not common, or even
I don't think they have books except for the pact.
Only books that are written from the time of the rebellion of 140 years ago. Anything before that is I think they call it a red letter relic or red level relic or something, like forbidden stuff, like a Pez dispenser, because anything, because we don't know yet what the past was that led to this, and so that kind of is anything that could maybe lead to that happening again, they want to prevent, because erasing past knowledge is always the way to go.
And yet what's inside this vault is an incredible library, an incredible almost archive of not just books, but also recordings and toys.
It's like a garden of earthly delights.
Yes. Yeah. Everything,
it really is.
Everything that you would want to save that represents our civilization, really. Everything that represents all the flowering of civilization to the point of when the silos were built. This including our artworks and that sort of stuff. And it's only accessible to a few. And there's this other document besides the pact. Now I forget what they called it, that sort of lays out all the things, the special instructions for the judge, the head of IT, and the mayor for what to do when you have rebellion, or in case of rebellion, break glass. Like these are all the steps that you're required to take to put, and it's very insidious. It's very manipulative. Okay, we have to do this, betray these people and frame those people in order to cause this to happen. And it's all these steps where we're supposed to trying to anticipate the human nature and the way that these rebellions come about, and almost foment rebellion on occasion in order to put it down as a pressure valve for the silent.
That's exactly what I was thinking. And one of the things that I kept thinking of is, because the book that Bernard, when Juliet refuses to clean, and then he opens this book in case of a non-cleaning or something, prepare for war. And you think, oh my gosh, wait a minute.
Right.
So you get this sense that people are only seen as really the sum of themselves. Like there's nothing more to human beings. And of course, when you look at the opening credits, they're almost insect-like. It looks like you're looking at an ant's colony that doesn't have, it might have a collective conscience, but the individuals don't have consciences. And so that's how, if this happens, then if this, then this, if this, then this. And so it's very programmed. And so that's when I started thinking, okay, there's some AI manipulating all of this. Because this is not how people think or behave. And so, but in order to keep the outcome to be the same, you have to manipulate things that maybe otherwise would not have been manipulated. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
And so so the people aren't free to actually rebel or break away and make mistakes and learn from those mistakes. They're always stunted. And I also think it was the decor and everything reminded me a lot of Soviet architecture. It was absolutely brutalist.
Yeah,
and that's,
it looks like Boston City Hall. I live near Boston. And that's what Boston City Hall looks like.
And there's a reason for that. There's a reason it's built to look like that. It's to put you in your place.
Yeah. And that's one of the things and this is, I think, especially relevant for you, Alix, because it was when you Sacred Art, you can contrast the silo itself. It's gray. Everything, the clothes are gray. Everything is gray. There is no, even the gardens are gray.
They're hazy. They're hazy.
Yeah. And then when you get into that vault and suddenly there's color, there's the brightness of that initial chamber where they encounter the AI. And then you go into the library section and it's still lots of browns and stuff, but it's, there are hues to it. There's more color and light.
There's a richness, a softness, where you have that candlelight white, whereas the other white is like that task blue toned white. A couple of things about that I noticed. The lower down you went in the silo, the less color you got. And everything was muted, but when you get down to the down deep, there's just really no color.
Right.
I have a friend who grew up in Poland. She's my age, so she remembers the fall of the Soviet Union. And every once in a while, they would get little care packages from the West. And she said she was about 6 or 7 the first time she got one of these care packages. And she opened it up, and that was the first time she'd ever seen color.
Wow.
Yeah. Huh. I know. You don't even think about that, do you?
Yeah, and there was the school in Silo 18 or
17.
17, I get it mixed up. And I don't know if it's the reason there was color there was because it was an up-topper school. So it's the higher class citizens, their kids get an education and aren't just made to go into a trade or manual labor for the rest of their lives. So there was color there, but it was also still a little bit muted as well. And the lighting there was because the generator was barely functioning. It was just had the light on, and I guess whatever the lost boys or lost children were needed. But aside from that, it was not much there. But yeah, you could see that there was color in that school. But I don't think we saw anything like that in Silo in Silo 18.
I don't remember seeing a school in particular.
It was when Juliet was looking around. Right.
Sorry, in Silo 18, I don't remember seeing a school, but yes, when Solo went in and was like, oh, yeah.
The use of color in storytelling, like to me, the most dramatic example of that, a little tangent, is in Schindler's List, which is filmed in black and white until the very one scene where you have him following the little girl in red as she goes through during the cleaning of the ghettos by the Nazis. And so it's that dramatic use of color and the cinematography. I don't want to underrate how important the cinematography and the production design of this show is to the overall storytelling. It is huge. Like you mentioned, the down deep where the drilling machine is, it's all blue and black. It's so dark. It's the dark secrets. It reminds me a little bit of the Mines of Moria in The Lord of the Rings. That darkness, I expect a Balrog to come up out of it.
Well, that's the digging machine way at the bottom.
Spoilers. Yeah. There's a Balrog inside.
Yeah.
since we're talking about the AI and the legacy, let's talk about the safeguard. This was a puzzle that Lucas Kyle, two first names. Lucas Kyle had been set to solve by Bernard played by the awesome Tim Robbins. But Lucas Cal has been set on this quest to solve this puzzle involving a previous sheriff and what the Judge Meadows had known and what is following these clues. And he'd left this encoded message. And it was interesting. Like, it was almost like a Sherlock Holmes mystery in the midst of all this. And it leads him all the way down to the down deep into this tunnel that Juliet had seen on a schematic from that forbidden hard drive. And when he gets to that door, the AI voice tells him, if you go any further, the safeguard will be released, everyone will die, you can't tell anyone about it, and you have to go back up. And I'm not sure if it told him anything else in like off screen, but it turns out the safeguard is a poison. There's a pipe with a poison that the folks in Silo 17 had also discovered and blocked so that it couldn't poison everyone but they also died anyway when they went out. So what do you think about the safeguard and this tunnel and what it's about? My theory, just to throw it out there, is the tunnel leads to a central nexus that connects all of the silos. And sorry, that was my AI talking to me. Not sure what I said, but my theory is it connects to a central nexus where whoever's in charge of things, overseeing all the silos. Kind of reminds me of the TV show Fallout a little bit too, which is based on the video game, a little of that. But what do you think of the safeguard and this secret that's behind this door? Jeff, I know so. You can say what you want, but also Alex, what do you think of it?
Jeff, did you want to say anything, or shall? Because you know it all.
Well, yeah, I've read, and I won't, of course, spoil anything. But yeah, I'm interested to see how they reveal peel back all the layers. Because the nice thing with this show is we know we're getting the full story. It's not going to be there's only 2 books, and the showrunners are making up the last book. We have the blueprint, and there'll be some deviations, I'm sure. But I'm interested, and it's been a long time since I've read the book, so I remember the overall things, but not the small details. So I'm excited to see how that develops. But yeah, that's all I'll say on that, because I know what it all is, so I don't want to.
All right, so I'm going to give my theory, because I'm like totally in. So just to go back a little bit. I don't know if y'all ever remembered the show Revolution.
Yes.
It came out. Okay.
Yeah.
So
I love that show.
I did too. I was like, not a season 2. But at one point they were living in very there was no electricity in that show.
Right.
And so people were like thrown back to maybe the 18th century. And I think it was season 1 of Silo, there was a flashback to Juliet's life, and her mother had made a microscope, and Judicial came in and confiscated it. And she was trying to make it in order to hopefully save her son.
Right.
And I thought, and because there is a rule in the silos that you cannot magnify things to a certain strength, you're limited. And I'm like,
right,
nanotech. And it's the nanotech that's keeping everybody held back and limited. And I think there's something similar in Silo. There's something, and I think ultimately, because I really thought about this, especially today for some reason, I cannot imagine you have an elitist silo. Because if you don't have to live like that, why would you live like that?
Right.
What are you going to have? So if you have, let's say, the heads of officials of the U.S. government or world governments decided, we're all going to live in this silo. Are you going to have senators and presidents like down in the down deep? No, I mean, they're going to be totally elites. And so I think it's the AI is perpetuating this because this is how it survives.
Right.
Does that make sense? That's my theory. I don't know, Jeff. Am I way off?
We'll have to wait and see.
Don't tell us.
No, don't. But so that's my thing. I think it's actually not a human being at all who's perpetuating this. It's the AI.
Something's been programmed to perpetuate the human race, and it's using logic. And we've seen that before where sci-fi stories where, and Star Trek did this several times, in fact, in the original series, where an AI has been given control over the fate of a civilization to perpetuate, to save it.
Exactly.
But because it's logic without mercy, it goes too far, and it takes away freedoms.
Yeah, and that's why thou shalt not make a machine in the likeness of a human mind.
That's right.
Just to quote the Orange Catholic Bible.
So I briefly mentioned Bernard, which fascinating character who goes from being the head of IT in the first season to being basically the man in charge of everything, trying to, from his point of view, he's trying to hold it all together. He's trying to fix things the best way that the Pact gives him, that the AI and the Legacy give him, and he just keeps failing because people keep being unpredictable. People are people. People won't behave rationally necessarily, or at least the way you expect them to. They will have unintended reactions, whether it's Sims or the leaders of the rebellion or Walk or whoever it is, the sheriff, everybody, they keep behaving unexpectedly, and he keeps failing. And it's an interesting viewpoint on a man who thinks he's in control, and yet everything's slipping through his fingers. It's fascinating to see him. He's falling apart through the season, even long before he realizes it.
Yeah, I think what broke him was when he murdered Mary Meadows.
Yes.
Who was like the love of his life.
Right.
And then when he found out, it doesn't matter what you do, you're not in control. And to think he did that that just broke him.
Right.
He thought he was making this sacrifice for the better of the silo. He was very fundamentalist in his worldview.
That's a good way.
And the Pact, it was like that thin onion skin paper, almost, and the way the paragraphs were divided out, it was almost like a biblical text.
Yes.
It had the little ribbon.
It is definitely a religious text. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so he did all of this. It's almost you're living your life according to your beliefs, and you find out your God was going to kill you the whole time. That would break anybody. Right. Yeah. And it's very much like the Pact is very much a religion. It's not just a contract, a work contract or something. It is a religion in the silos, and the founders are the gods of that religion. Yeah.
Even oaths and curses are made using the name of the founders.
Yeah. Thank the founders. Yeah.
And we have Founders Day, and we have all these things. And so it becomes, they're treated as these revered mythological figures, especially since there's that break where they don't know their own history. And that's an interesting aspect to this whole show is what happens when you don't know your own history, when you're cut off from who you are. And that's a huge aspect of this. They're stuck, not just literally physically stuck in the silo, but they're stuck in place, living, not advancing. The silo can't advance. They can't advance technologically, humanly, spiritually, emotionally. They're made to stay in this one moment in time, essentially living day to day. And human beings are not made to live that way. We strive. We need to, ad astra? We need to strive for the stars. They literally don't know the stars. Like I love that scene from season 1, and it comes up again in season 2 where Lucas Kyle sees the stars on the display screen of the outside at night and is speculating, what could it be? And because he doesn't even know what a star is. And that moment where Judge Meadows confirms for him that's what they are. And she gives him a little taste of the forbidden knowledge and then sends him to the mines. And it's just, it's inhuman what is being done to him.
It is. And this is the thing. What I found really interesting is it did make you question, well, what is a human being? And I think the silo itself, because of course, and again, in the opening credits, it shifts the angle a little bit and it looks like a DNA strand, the double helix. And so you're questioning, what is it to be a human being? And this is not how inevitably their humanity comes to the surface. And that's when this safeguard is implemented.
Right.
They're just killed off to start all over again. And that's why I'm saying, like, I don't think whoever's behind that is a human being.
It's like a scientist purging an experiment that's gone awry and we'll just start in a new test tube. It's because it's test tube too. Yeah.
It is, yeah. But I just don't think a human being, because if it was, so they've been underground.
Centuries?
Jeff, have they been underground for 300 years? Is it
I don't remember exactly. At least the memory's been blocked or they don't have anything past 140 years in this silo. And I think it's been it was a couple hundred before that. I don't exactly remember.
Right.
Yeah.
So let's say 3 centuries maybe, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm just thinking if you had a silo, weirdly, like the elitist ultra silo, that was controlling everything, you would think that someone within that 300 years would go, this is wrong.
Right.
Human beings can't do this. Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
But yeah, it's just, and the other thing is the syndrome. I have a theory about that, but it's gross.
The disease that
the shaking
Sheriff
disease.
Billings, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's a show thing. It's not a book thing. So that is a mystery that I don't know the answer to.
Oh, interesting.
Well, do you know what? So I looked up, I was like, that's weird. And in the book, in the series, the more assertive Billings becomes, the less he's shaking. So it's almost like his body is rebelling against it. But I had already figured this out before they're like, oh, your hands aren't shaking anymore. But do you know what Kuru is? Have you ever heard of that disease?
No.
Okay, so I looked up the symptoms of the syndrome, and they're very similar to, basically you start these tremors, and over time, it's a degenerative neurological disease, and you eventually die from it. And so there's this disease called Kuru, and you only get it from eating human brain.
Okay. And I have heard of that. I have heard of that.
Yeah. And so I was like, well, if you're in this silo and they recycle everything and people go back into nothing's wasted, I'm like, are they actually killing people?
Soylent Green?
Because, yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Well, they do bury the people in the farms as for fertilizer.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then my theory was blown up when he started becoming assertive and he stopped shaking. So there you go.
Maybe it's psychological.
Yeah. I'm guessing it's just my thought is it's just some kind of condition from the limited population. And I was interested, so I looked it up. And the 10,000 is more than you need to have a sustainable population that doesn't suffer from too much interbreeding. But I'm wondering if it's just there's either it's that there is a limited genetic pool, and there's only so many people can have kids. So maybe it's just if 2 people have the right chromosomes, it gives them that, or it's something to do with something just either chemicals that are just in the air in the silo just from being, because no air is getting in, no air is really getting out. So if it is any kind of chemical or some kind of radiation from something. And the light
is artificial light. Their sun is, even though they do, it changes to mimic, it has artificial days and artificial nights, but it's basically the sun is not even the sun.
Right. They're not getting sunlight. They're not getting fresh air. Everything is recycled over the trees. Yeah. That's
probably smells in there as well.
Probably.
Yeah. I don't think it smells very good. Because people are
animals
taking
in there as well.
Yeah. But just garbage and things from the down deep, because there's the middle of the silo, it's one big hole. You could drop from the very top to the very bottom, because when they were negotiating, I did think that was this is a little bit of a tangent, sorry, but when the mechanics came up and they wanted to, in good faith, negotiate with the people in charge, they had different things they were dropping to communicate to the down deep. This is what you do next. And this is turn off the generator, turn on the generator. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah.
They were
so clever. Some of the stuff like that, the world building is really clever. The way they thought about it. It's a massive cast, and I wish I had the time to go through everybody, because there's so many interesting characters. There's Sims, there's Walker, there's Shirley and Knox, the 2 leaders of the rebellion, and that, so on and so forth. So there's not really time to go through everyone, but I want to talk a little bit about Solo, who we find out eventually is Jimmy Conroy. And it's played by Steve Zahn, and he's this interesting character who's basically lived alone from childhood inside the remains of Silo 17, 18.
17.
17, okay.
Yeah.
Gotta keep this straight. I should have put up a sign on my desk. So he's lived alone in the remains of this silo, carrying the guilt, and he's not mentally well. And I have to be honest, throughout most of the season, I was waiting for him to snap. Like he does lose emotional control a couple times, but I kept waiting for him to be violent. And in fact, they lead us to believe that he was betraying her in Juliet, but it turns out he was actually being attacked by other people we did not know were still in the silo. But he's a fascinating character. He's childlike at times. He's menacing at other times. I think Steve Zahn does a great job with this character.
I agree. When they were in the classroom for the first time, and he said, "Oh, I used to sit next to her."
Yeah.
And that's when I thought, oh, that rebellion happened when he was a child.
Yes.
And he did such a good job of acting like a 12-year-old child, although I don't know if he would act like that all the time. Then that brings up the question, like, how do you mature? Do you mature around people, or do you just naturally mature? He just emotionally he was very stunted.
Yeah. If you're never around people, do you not grow in your ability to relate? And maybe that's true. Maybe you don't.
Isn't that like, that's the forbidden study? You can never.
Yeah, you couldn't actually do that to someone, to a child.
Yeah, exactly.
One of the things that I liked was how they used him to reveal information in ways that, like Juliet was, he's just babbling again, but he's saying things that are important, and that she eventually realizes he's actually saying things that are important. He's not just babbling. I thought that was fascinating because it meant you had to keep paying attention to what Jimmy/Solo was saying here.
Yeah.
That was good. I didn't like the introduction at the end as much. The young family, the young man and young woman, I don't remember their names. And then the one they called Eater, whose name was Hope, which I do remember her name because Hope is a very interesting name for someone.
Agreed.
In this.
It was, I think, Amanda and was it Rick or something?
Maybe.
Something like
Yeah.
That. Yeah.
Who would have been, where do they come from? Were they in the silo? Were they brought there from a different silo by their parents?
I don't exactly remember.
Yeah.
But I think it might be just that they were there might have been a few families here and there that weren't in the rebellion, and maybe these are their kids that survived, and there weren't many of them, so they stuck together. But again, I don't remember. It probably was in the book, and I don't exactly remember how that goes. I really remember the Juliet and Solo stuff. I don't remember. Okay.
Yeah,
and there were the kids, but I didn't remember if they really had an origin.
Okay, I really disliked Amanda. I thought she was in some ways unreasonably antagonistic toward Hope.
Yeah,
like over the top. Like, would she really be like, I don't know. It just felt.
Yeah, I think that I didn't like, this is going to be a little bit of a nitpick about that character. Again, she was unbelievable. But the thing is, when she brought up the bow and arrow, I'm like, a bow and arrow? You can't walk 200 paces without turning a corner. Why would you get a bow and arrow? Do you know?
Yeah.
It just seemed very strange. And I'm thinking, well, if you want to kill rats, because they do talk about eating rats, but you wouldn't kill a rat with it just seemed very out of place, and it didn't make any sense.
Well, they knew Solo was there. They knew because he presumably killed their parents.
After they had attacked him, yeah.
Yeah. So they knew he was there. I'm surprised they knew how to make a bow and arrow.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
It just was so, like, you would not have that kind of weapon in the silo.
Right.
Well, if their parents made it, if it was because if their parents were they knew people in the rebellion, and like their parents maybe either survived the rebellion or at least weren't participating. Maybe they saw them using, because I think eventually you would, trying to figure out what weapons you can use, you might just start
naturally come up
throwing anything you can at the wall, and you're like, oh, maybe we can launch this thing faster with a string with some kind of than just throwing it or
but
something.
Wouldn't it be an atlatl? Wouldn't that be the thing before?
I think you might start with that.
Yeah.
Slingshots. Yeah.
But they could have found they could have found a book or something in the
That's
the chaos.
True.
So.
That's a good point. Good point, Jeff.
A little Robin Hood book would be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They did have the classics in the vaults.
Yep.
That's true. Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
There's a lot of food in that vault, by the way.
Yeah. 30 years worth of food.
Yeah. I'm wondering, was the machine, like was the AI providing it somehow? Was it making it? Was it coming from outside somewhere? Because this inner vault is designed to sustain somebody. It's got a place to live. It's got like an apartment in it. It's designed as a sort of a fallback place to sustain somebody in case of worst case scenario. So is it providing the means, like it's got a separate energy source, electricity source, like maybe a fusion engine, something that can last for 30 years without being touched. So like a fusion reactor or something. There's a lot of questions I have about how that inner vault works.
Yeah.
I guess I assumed there was just a stockpile of food and supplies that could last somebody for presumably the rest of their lifetime if they were locked in there.
Why do you think we had display, the outside world being green? So we show the outside world to everyone as being desolate, and then there's this deception where if someone accesses a certain thing, it shows it as green and verdant, as if that's the hidden truth, when in fact the reality is that it's desolate. Why the hidden quote-unquote truth of the verdant world? I'm still struggling with why they would do that, because it seems to me as if you give people a hint that the outside world is okay, they're going to rebel to go outdoors.
Exactly. It's to trigger a rebellion.
So it's the rebellion trigger when they want to have the rebellion every once in a while.
Yes.
Yeah, because if you're sent out to clean, you're shown this display. And I think it's to trick you into thinking, oh, our internal screens that we look at inside the silo are not capturing this beauty, and that's why I want to clean, so that everybody in the silo can maybe see this too. And it's tricking them, those who are cleaning in that way. But Juliet figured that out at the end of the season, last season. And I think you're right, Alex. It's just if you can pipe that into the displays, because that's what I think all the people in the silo were wanting to in 17 were wanting to leave, because they thought Juliet's okay, so we can be okay, and they all just wanted to, and they're just pent up from centuries. Just as a people, they're centuries. It's almost like in some of the later Dune books where the God Emperor keeps humanity suppressed, and then once that suppression is over, they just explode. So I think it's something like you said. I think it's a way to let off the steam and maybe thin out the numbers a little bit, especially if it's your rebellious mechanical, because the rebellion always starts in mechanical, they say.
Yeah, exactly, which I think is interesting, because maybe inevitably somebody goes digging around there.
But also they're the poor, the downtrodden, the ones who don't have what the elites at the upper levels have. So there's always that class envy that's perhaps fomented on purpose by the system.
Yeah. And also I think it's interesting how the whole idea of the pact really, for a lot of people, was just hanging by a thread.
Yeah.
They just needed this one thing to happen, and they're like, oh, this is what I've been thinking all along.
Right.
And that's when they start losing control, is when people no longer trust the pact and they don't trust the system that they're in.
Right.
Yeah, because they go back to someone who was involved in a previous rebellion in 17, and they track down his family, and he's known in shame, but really now he's starting to become an underground hero. And the family makes wool, which was an interesting. If you've read the books, there's multiple meanings to that, to wool, because wool for cleaning, but also wool over the eyes, and maybe more meanings. So,
yeah. There's so much more we could cover. We could do a couple hours. This is a show where we could do every episode of the show. So maybe in season 3,
I was going to say, maybe season 3, that might be the way to do it.
Maybe we need to do that. There's a couple of things I just want to wrap up with. First up, Juliet has a line at the very end, I think in the last episode, in fact, where she says, we have to trust each other, be angry at the people who put us here, but trust in those who are with us in the muck. And that really, for me, feels like the anthem for this. Be mad at the people you're supposed to be mad at, but don't take it out on each other. Be mad at the people who put us in this situation, but don't take it out on each other. Focus. Be united against them. Don't let them turn us against each other.
Yeah, and I think that comes from her working in the down deep, in the generator, because you can have all kinds of problems, but you've got to keep that generator working.
Right.
You've got to put aside whatever issues you have
The generator
you
is
got to
life.
trust somebody's gonna hold you up while you fix the blade of the generator, and somebody's gonna while you're in an underground water tank trying to keep the thing cool, like in the first season. So mechanical, they really have to trust each other because their lives depend on it, and as a larger extension, the silo's life depends on the generator.
Yeah, much more. They have to trust each other much more than people up top.
Yes.
They're much more self-serving up there.
So the other thing I wanted to wrap up with is the last scene. So we get this very last scene at the very end of the last episode, which takes place in contemporary time. And we have what turns out to be a congressman in Washington, D.C., going into a bar. He thinks he's there for a blind date. Turns out she's a reporter who's trying to pump him for information. We find out something about how he is a veteran of a war, and there was some kind of dirty bomb that hit Washington, D.C., and it irradiated a lot of people, but not everyone. And even to the point where they check people at the door to establishments before he goes in the bar, the bouncer checks him for radiation, or if it's radiological or biological or something he's checking him for. So people are contagious. And they go in, they have this conversation, and he had brought a gift for his date. She went to Oregon State. Their mascot is the Mighty Ducks, or the Ducks, not the Mighty Ducks, the Ducks. And so he got that duck Pez dispenser that we actually see in season 1, where people are trying to figure out what the heck is a Pez dispenser, which is funny because a Pez dispenser is a weird thing if you don't know what it is. And so what do you think is this scene just here's a taste to understand how we got where we are? Like, it's a hint of what caused the silos to be built. Is there more to it? What do you think? What did you think of that last scene? Jeff, I'll get your opinion on that one.
Yeah, and this is something I think from the book too. So I won't say too much, but if you remember, I think you may have just mentioned it, but there's a Pez dispenser in season 1 of Silo of a Yellow Ducks dispenser. So, but yeah, no, that's without saying too much. The second book is a bit different, so I'm thinking they're going to do a little bit of mixing of book 2 and 3 together in the last in the last 2 seasons. And I did want to comment that the actress who was playing the reporter when I was watching it, she looks so familiar. And I've been rewatching some of the Marvel Netflix stuff leading up to another Marvel show, and I was like, that looks like Colleen from Iron Fist. And it was her name's Jessica Henwick. And she's been in other stuff, but I recognized her from that. And then I looked it up after. I was like, it was her. So, and I won't speak to any casting news, but you can look up some casting news if interested. And there's some stuff there. But no, it's going to be an interesting setup to the next season. And I'm looking forward to how they do it.
Oh, see, based on what you just said, I wonder if we're going to see more flashbacks in season 2. But I'm not going to push you on that. I don't want to be spoiled. But it occurred to me based on the idea that if they have to mix book 2 and 3, maybe book 2. Just my speculation, book 2 was all more flashback, whereas book 3 brings us back to the present. But don't tell me. It's just
I've sworn the fact, so I will not. I do not want to go clean.
I think they're going to have to do a little bit of an origin story on the silos, because then you even wonder, well, is this just in the United States, or is it something that happened all over the world, and why? It was very realistic, like what they were discussing in this bar or this restaurant about the dirty bomb, and is the United States going to retaliate? And what was interesting is, in order to be eligible to run for office, you had to serve in the military,
or at least to be electable. I took it as
something. Yeah, I thought it was like required that you had to be in the military in order to be eligible to run for office. So you're looking at a very much, these are not safe times. But at the same time, Washington looks like Washington. People going out to fancy restaurants. But a lot of what they were discussing, sitting there, you could go, yeah, gosh, I could see that happening. Could I see the silos happening? No. I don't want to. But it was, so I think it was grounded in something where we could project from where we are, where they are.
Right.
If that makes any sense.
Yeah, I think it's true. All right. So any final thoughts on season 2 of Silo before we sign off? Jeff, any final thoughts on what we anything we talked about?
No, it was a great season. I can't wait to see what's next. And there was something the showrunners have come out in an interview. They said if you want to know the fates of Juliet and Bernard, they do reveal that in an interview. So if you can look that up if you don't want to wait a year or however long. So
I have a feeling.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You're not going to get rid of your two main characters, but I have a feeling.
No, or at least not one. One's probably going to be in bad shape, but
Right.
the other one.
Right.
Yeah.
How about you, Alex? Final thoughts?
I think one of the going back to what your quote was about we have to trust each other, I would just say that is part of a way of finding truth, is to trust one another. And I think that's a really good message that she sent to the young people in Silo 17.
For me, I would say humanity, we're made to be communal, but we're not just like ants in a colony. We're made to be family. And that a family is built not on pacts and contracts, but on love. And that's really, I think, if anything Silo tells us is that we need to be built around love and not roles, tribes, division. These are all things that we see a lot of in the world around us. But what we need to be is united in love and hope and mercy and all of these things. And I think, if anything, the despair and the bad things that we see in Silo are tempered by themes of hope and drive to unite and hope for the future. People are still having children. Billings and his wife have a baby, and Sims and Camille have a baby and have children. Like there's hope and there's future. And that's what I feel like. I hope that's where Silo is going, that it's not just another dystopian post-apocalyptic disaster, that we're leading to something that's positive. And so I love it. I'm looking forward to where we're going. I'm very glad that they're already filming season 3, which means we don't have to wait forever. Hopefully we'll have
season
it
4, isn't it?
By the end
it was back to back.
Yeah, 2025 would be nice. By the end of 2025, that would be nice. Thank you, please, Apple. I'm an Xer. I grew up when you got 3 months between seasons, and that was and you remembered what happened last season.
Yeah.
So very good. All right, well, that will do it for our discussion. Before we go, I do want to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create the secrets of movies and TV shows, including Drew M., Joe D., Marshall B., Catherine O., and Rhea B. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue the secrets of movies and TV shows and all the shows at StarQuest. And you can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. So that's it from us. We would love to hear from you what you think of Silo Season 2, your theories, your speculations. No spoilers, but let us know by commenting on the show at sqpn.com/secrets. You can go to the StarQuest Facebook page, leave a comment there. You can send an email to secrets@sqpn.com. Come join us on the StarQuest Discord community, where we're at sqpn.com/discord. And until next time, Alix Murray, thank you for joining me and sharing the secrets of Silo Season 2.
Thanks so much, Dom. It was fun.
And Jeff Haecker, thank you as well.
Thank you, Dom.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to the secrets of movies and TV shows on StarQuest. Here's another show on the StarQuest network you're sure to enjoy. Let's Science. Find the show wherever fine podcasts are found or at sqpn.com/science. I'd like to thank Patrick McCaffrey of Moonshadow Studios for editing this episode. To have your audio edited professionally and with care, check out more of Patrick's work at moonshadowstudios.biz. That's moonshadowstudios.biz.